to today's debate.
Go on.
Everybody is very happy about it, as we see. So, as you know, 7 minutes speaking time. After first minute, a clap. After 6 minutes, a clap. And after 7 minutes, 2. Everybody should know that by now. Okay, so, you know the motion. This house as a couple capable of having children or eligible to adopt children would not have children. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to welcome Ellie to open this debate.
Madam Speaker, Callum and I in Opening Government will try to prove to you that we believe that it's a deeply irrational decision for individual couples to have children. We believe that on many levels. We believe that on a personal level, as an economical level, and as well as a societal level, which Callum is going to go into for you. First of all, we believe the costs outweigh the benefits by far. We believe you give up a lot, or basically all of your personal freedom when you decide to have a child. Why? Because you decide to be tied down for life. You decide to give up your life as you've lived it before and just quit everything you enjoyed just to give up to be with your child. We believe this is such a big decision. You can't really make this rationally and not for yourself, and we believe, therefore, it's bad. We believe that women and future mothers suffer from being tied down because they're most of the time the primary caregiver. There's no freedom for them to contribute to the society or economy as they wish. To the economy, they have to give money for their children. To society, they first off have always make the decision as a mother, as the clan of, like the head of a family. We believe this is very bad because at that point you're defined by your role as a mother, and you, especially in conservative societies, and you no longer are defined by your own personal wishes, and you basically pressure yourself from the inside as well as from the outside to fulfill this role, and you give up all your agency you ever had about your life. And you cannot really do anymore as you please with your life. And we believe this is an incredible harm with hardly any benefits. So, on the second point, the economic costs. What are there for economic costs? You have to provide education for your child. You have to provide the best possible education for your child because you want to push your child to succeed. You want to send your child to a private kindergarten, possibly a bilingual kindergarten, to push it. You want private education? No, not yet. You want to really, you're forced to spend the most amount of money you have into the education of your child. Not just that, you have to provide them with food, with shelter, with clothes. Because if you don't do that, you're clearly a horrible mother. If you don't spend a shit ton of money on the clothes your children wear so they can fit into their like little subculture, you're a shit parent. No. You have to make sure that they survive, but also that they succeed. There's this whole huge pressure on parents that the more that they have to spend as much money as possible on their child, because the success of a parent isn't just measured by the success on how they raise their child, but how successful that child will be in the end, and how successful that child will turn out. So we believe there's this huge pressure to spend more and more and more and more money. You judge the worth of as I said, you judge the worth of this kid, not on how much the parents love them. You judge them on how much it'll succeed and how much the parents can actually get out of that child. No. Parents feel this obligation to the child, so they provide far longer than the 18 years that they legally, quote unquote, should provide for them. This is, having a child, Madam Speaker, is a lifelong commitment. We believe this is not a rational decision. Nobody rationally would say, okay, I'm going to shackle myself to this other being for the rest of my life just because. We believe there's I'm not done yet. There's no out possibility. So, because society won't let you, because you have to love the child and you have to provide it. What are the supposed benefits we hear? Oh, you get unconditional love. Where's the proof for that? And where does it say, no, that unconditional love is so great that it outweighs these economic costs? A lot of children just don't appreciate their parents. A lot of children don't see the sacrifice that the parents make. And we see this is very, very bad. And then they say, you know, children, when you're old, they take care of you. Who says that? You don't know if your child loves you. This is very uncertain. Your child might hate you and just put you in some home where you rot for the rest of your life. No, not yet. So if you look at the costs versus the benefits, we don't believe there are a lot of benefits. We think that if you're struggling with survival in today's economy, in today's society, unconditional love is just not enough. Putting yourself in such an uncertain situation that might face you with a poor house, we believe you should not have a child. We believe it's not worth having a child. Mark, I'm going to take you now.
People know all those risks and they know all those financial disadvantages. Why do you think that all humans in human history always wanted to have children? What do you think is the prime motivator?
Because we believe, as I said, there's this pressure and this idea that if you have a uterus, you might just as well use it to squeeze out a shitload of children. We believe this is an irrational decision. Mark, I'm going to explain something to you. I grew up a girl, in case you didn't know. And you get Barbies, you're faced with baby-born dolls. You're just already from infancy on forced into this role that if you want to be a good woman, you squeeze out those babies, and this is the only way you succeed. On to my second point, the societal impact, which Callum is going to extend on. We already in principle believe that there are too many people living on this planet, and if these birth rates will continue the world will be overpopulated, and we know that the resources in the world are limited. The finite, I think, was the word Callum used. And we believe that if there's an increasing population with increasing standard of living, we will just not have the capabilities to support all those people living here, because the people will continue to consume more. If they're not going to consume less, and we believe that it's unsustainable to have more children and keep having children, because we believe by deciding to have children, you end up creating a society and a life that's worse for everyone around you. We believe everyone has less. You cannot really share the little resources we have. The thing that will happen is that the gap between the rich and the poor will grow, and the conflict is inevitable. So, Madam Speaker, what have we given you so far in opening government? We believe that the benefits definitely don't outweigh the costs of having a child. We believe that it's too much of a restriction on a personal level as well on an economical level, and thirdly, too much of a burden for our society, and for all these reasons, we're proud to propose.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. And now we welcome the leader of the opposition, Leo.
Are we good? Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let us start, first of all, with a few assumptions here. The motion here says that we are eligible to adopt. And if we're eligible to adopt, we would say that we're at least financially secure, or we would not be eligible to adopt. We're also mentally and physically capable, not unhealthy, we don't have any other issues, we're stable in life. Now, we want to provide you the following line. We want to tell you that the kind of experience and the kind of joy that you get from children outweighs these sort of harms that they demonstrate to you on the side. But it is better to put that. We'll put it to them in terms they can understand, because they want to take it in this financial approach, right? We buy holidays all the time. We buy ourselves experience all the time. We say, this is an experience of a lifetime. You definitely get your money's worth, okay? You enjoy it. You have fun. It provides you value. That's what we're going to tell you here. But before we do that, I'm going to explain this on kind of 3 levels. 1, on the joy that it provides you. 2, on this idea of legacy and long-term. And 3, on this, where was my third point here? On the idea of providing future security. And my partner will talk again about the social aspects and other kind of issues. But before that, let me quickly, a few points of quick rebuttal. So first they depict this massive dystopia by telling us that there'll be this economic disparity between the rich and the poor, that like this will be a massive cut. Look, if that's really the scenario, then kids is not the issue here, okay? We have a bigger problem with society that we need to fix on saying how we allow people to adopt or not adopt, or have children or not have children. And it's a much bigger systemic issue, not on a personal one that we should say we would like to have one. Okay, we should be allowed. However, right, the second point that they'll say is, no one ever shackles themselves to someone for such a long time, because no one ever gets married or has a partner. Yeah, I'll take you, Mati. Go for it.
Yeah, just to your legacy point, don't you think that when people always identify with a certain legacy, it just causes war like in Game of Thrones?
Yeah, you know what? Throughout history, I haven't really seen that many parents try to decapitate other parents to preserve their own DNA. Like, maybe kings might do that, but on the personal, private couple stuff, yeah, right. On the personal, private life, I'm fairly certain that's a bit out there, okay? Let's kind of rein this in a bit, okay? And talk about what real people do with real kids, like kiddie parties, okay? Right, so let's talk about that. So first of all, like this idea of, stability and attaching yourself to someone. We have love all the time with other couples. We attach ourselves and we even promise to stay with them forever, right? The same sort of things that are making us willing to attach to other people are the sort of things that make us willing to commit to certain things, like having a child, this experience. We choose a job. We might start our own business. These are things that are irreversible in some cases if I choose one way or another. It doesn't mean that just because I make a life-altering decision of should I move to a different country, does that mean I can't do that because it might affect my entire life? No, we make these decisions about everything all the time. And we make this decision as well when it suits us, when it benefits us. And this is a personal decision, and if it suits our personal choices, we say, good, go for it, right?
Point of information.
Go for it.
Can you please explain, though, how having a child provides you those kinds of benefits?
Yes, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that now, yes. So here's the third point of rebuttal. They're talking about stability. Like, oh my God, right? I know I can't now, walk around naked in my house and I have to take some of the chains off the wall and not have sex and margaritas everywhere. Fine, I'm willing to accept those kind of restrictions. But what kind of benefits, right, do I get from the children, okay? And that's fundamentally the idea here, the kind of joy that I get. Now, we know we get benefits and joy, right? So my first argument, the benefits and joy. We get them all the time. Say, for example, we have a puppy, okay? Brings us lots of joy, happiness. We have a kitten, right? Pets always brings happy. We say that kids are kind of an extension of that to an infinite degree, okay? They communicate back. They give us pride in what they do and what they achieve. Like they come home and say, look, mommy, I drew you this. And you go, oh. Right? That's love, right? That caring, that little bit of, oh, that was so touching. They thought of me. It's unconditional love. That's priceless. Yeah, go for it.
People post kitty pictures on Facebook every day, and they're feeling the same joy.
They post kitty pictures because they are so proud of their child. That's the evidence of it. Because it brings them so joy. Because you can't go to someone who has a family and they don't take out their wallet and go, look at my kid, right? Because they've got 1,000 pictures that they want to show you because they're so happy and they're so proud and they're so in love with their kids. It's so much joy and pressure that no other experience compares to it. That's what you're doing. That's the kind of experience you want to have. Yes, have it. Okay? So we say that there is a definite benefit in the experience. No, thanks. There's definitely a benefit in this experience. There's definitely a joy that we can see from every single person that has these kids, that they benefits them. Okay, but it also gives you other more rational reasons because it gives you an excuse to kind of dress up and go trick-or-treating, okay, to be a kid again and live life through them. Okay, you don't like trick-or-treating. I'd love to dress up. I'm just waiting for a kid to have an excuse to say, and daddy's going to go with you this time, right? This is the fun that you get, okay, that you can do these things, okay, with your kids again. You can live through all of these experiences again. So they bring you these abilities to relive certain aspects of your youth that you enjoyed, create and foster this kind of your own routines, your own Christmas traditions, your own kind of birthday parties, your own family events, your own anything from board games to outdoor, to family camping, to experiences that you can do as a family. They broaden your horizons of things that you can do in opportunities and the ways you go about them. We think that's an experience that has a value immense, which beyond this, a few things of your already stable that can give you. Go for it.
Is it possible to do camping and board games without children?
Yeah, but it doesn't give you the same kind of joy when you go and watch that kid achieve their certain things. And certain things are not really possible to do without kids. So for example, if you're going out in the park trick-or-treating, you're either a perv or you're a parent, right? There's not real much ground in between, and that's kind of the problem. They give you a license to be a kid again, and that's the benefit and that's the joy. But a little bit quickly, right, just a little bit about this idea of legacy, because for some people this is important, right? And the legacy is in the way that they care for you when you're old, when you're sick. Like, I know that she's so paranoid about how her kids will hate her. I'm sorry about that, right? But I'm fairly hoping that my teaching of my kids will be with enough love that they will love me back, okay? But this is exactly the thing, that this kind of love, reciprocated and care, will live on, will remember once I pass on, once I die, once I continue, and show a testament to my ideas living on. And for those reasons, we beg you, have children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leo. And now we welcome you, the Deputy Prime Minister Callum, to further the case that's passed.
Madam Speaker, what Leo told you is that children provide you with a kind of experience and joy that you just can't quantify otherwise. Here's an experience, Leo. You're a poor couple in Nigeria. Due to societal and family pressures and perhaps a lack of education, you are essentially forced into the decision of having children. Your life and the life of your children is made far worse by the fact that you have to expend your limited resources on providing the best that you can for those kind of children. We say that that is a universal experience, that your life is always going to be worse off because you have to provide for those children that you would not have to do otherwise. That is why Ellie told you that it is an irrational decision from a personal point of view. They had no response to that other than to make some waffle about how, apparently provides you, certain kind of joys that you can never experience otherwise. Rebuttal. Firstly, he told us that we make irreversible decisions all the time, like having a job or a business, and having children is just like that. But these kinds of other experiences provide you with economic benefits, i.e. improve your life, whereas he never showed you how children actually improve your life other than give you a kind of warm and fuzzy feeling. We need more than that. Secondly, on the loss of freedom, he told you essentially that this warm and fuzzy feeling makes up for that kind of loss of freedom. No, thank you. But he already demonstrated that you can get that kind of feeling from other ways, like for example from having a pet, Madam Speaker. So what he is actually saying is he is demeaning the experience of childless families. He is making a value judgment and saying that only families with children can have that kind of experience, that only couples, that you could only ever be complete with a child. We say that is a wrong value judgment, or that is a value judgment that we find repulsive. He has provided no reason to make that value judgment except for his assumption that it's better. Then he told you that it provides you with benefits like reliving your youth. But I said in a point of information, you can do that without kids, like going camping or playing board games. And he didn't have a response to that. But all he said was that, it doesn't provide you the same kind of joy, except if you have children. No, that is a value judgment from you. I can say that I get the same amount of joy without having a family with children. So, we have, two value judgments here. We provided you with tangible reasons for why it's not in your economic interest, and it's not in a societal interest not to have children. So if this debate is about clashing value judgments, we provide you with better reasons, because not only do we make a value judgment, we provide you reasons that back that value judgment. Okay, onto my positive material. Firstly, to extend on what Ellie was talking about in terms of it not being society's interest, I'm going to talk about the environment in particular, because as Ellie already told told you, the current level of the population is unsustainable, and that this unsustainability has its worst effects on the environment. We think anthropomorphic climate change is real, and we are unable to avoid catastrophic change unless we do something drastic. And this unavoidable climate change that will have these massively detrimental impacts on our Earth comes directly from the consumption of sit-down too many people. We say the only real way to reduce consumption is to either reduce or not increase the level of the population, because we simply cannot innovate energy to a point where we can avoid that kind of climate change. The climate scientists have already told us that it is too late to prevent I think it was a 1.5 degree increase in the global temperature before the end of the 21st century. No, thank you. So we say, no, sit down. So we say that the only way that you can solve this issue is essentially to prevent the kind of consumption from increasing. And as Ellie already told you, with increasing standards of living as society develops, you're going to get ever increasing consumption unless you do something drastic. So we say that there are firstly direct harms. For example, the island nation of Kiribati, which is literally sinking under the sea because sea levels are rising, sit down. We say that that is a result of the massive consumption that comes from the overpopulation of the planet that we see with unchecked population growth. We also say that there's indirect harms. Sit down. We say that there's indirect harms because there's a diminishing supply of resources and an increase in demand from an increased population, as Ellie already explained to you, as they had no response to. Sit down. So we say that those indirect harms will actually cause conflict in the future. It will cause conflict in the future because essentially you have a far greater amount of people relying on a vastly diminished number of resources. That will always generate conflict, Mr. Speaker. The only solution to that is to reduce demand. The only way to do that is to reduce the population. Yep.
Firstly, why does it personally bother me? And secondly, if all humans don't have children and are extinct, who cares about climate change anyway?
Okay, so two things. Firstly, we are not saying from this motion there will suddenly be no babies. What we are saying is that from a couple's point of view, it is not a rational choice to have a child. So, Ellie already explained to you why from a personal point of view, it is irrational for parents to have a child. We are now also explaining that from a societal point of view, it is irrational for those individual couples to have a child. That is not saying that people don't make irrational decisions. We are just saying people should not have a child because it is not in their interests. Sit down. So, on the second point of substantive, encouraging efficiency. So we do think that this policy will lead to a massive reduction in the number of children that are being born and by extension the number of children that are being adopted. So we think that in these kinds of situations, governments are forced to make hard decisions about the reallocation of resources. We see this is already happening in countries whose birth rate is below the replacement level. Like in Japan, where the population is forecast to shrink by 20 million or something by the year 2080. That forces the government to make really hard decisions. For example, in Western countries, where we see a massive greying population. I will take you in a moment. I'm sorry, I can't. A massive greying population from the fact that there are far less workers to actually take care of all the old people that are appearing because we're living longer, because we're having less children. So we say this is a good thing because it encourages governments to make far more efficient policy, and we say to make better policy. For example, Madam Speaker, we say we'll encourage governments to spend far more on health because that is going to be what's more important to a society that has far less children, i.e. preserving those lives that they currently have for as long as possible, i.e. making sure that population is as healthy and productive as possible. We think that it will lead to massive productivity increases. We think the governments will have to force production. So that means they'll be encouraged to invest in the kind of technology that can make sure that they have an increased production to keep the standards of living that we're used to. Because it's irrational from a personal point of view, and because it's irrational from a societal point of view, and because all that they could rely on was a value judgment about fuzzy feelings with nothing behind it, we're proud to propose.
Thank you very much, Callum. And now we welcome the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Anna.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk to you about irrational decisions and why they are not always a good thing, a bad thing, why we actually like to make irrational decisions sometimes if they bring us happiness. I'm going to talk to you about future security, and I'm going to talk to you why having kids for good is society. First, a few points of rebuttal. First, your whole point about couples that are being forced into having a child doesn't really stand in this motion, because we're talking about couples that are eligible to adopt and thus have all the preconditions that Leo already talked to you about. Your whole point about, well, overpopulation is bad for the planet. Fine, we'll adopt a kid. It's already existing. Then what Ellie talked about, that people are conditioned into, that the whole reason why people want a child is because they have been conditioned, because women have been conditioned to want a child. Well, why are there so many gay people fighting for the right to adopt a kid? There must be something that gives them, makes them want a child even though they don't have a uterus. No, thank you. And also, you said that the government will be able to better spend the money to improve the world if there are more people that decide not to have children. Well, also consider that what is the reason why people want to improve the world for their children. We think that this legacy, the legacy that people leave, that Leo already told you about, is a major point why people try to think long term, why people try to think of the whole environment and everything to do for their children, because they love the children, want their children to have a better life. The government was very fixated on having kids as an irrational decision, and the strange thing is that irrational for them seemed to be hung up on economic criteria. Well, in our daily life, we make irrational decisions all the time. No, thank you. We eat candy. We go on holiday in the Caribbean. We go to bed early instead of working 12 hours and making more money. We marry. Why do we do that? Because it makes us happy. We think the goal in life should not be to have as much money as possible and to economically optimize our life earnings. We think our goal in life should be to be happy, to be satisfied with our lives. And we think that having kids is an irrational decision that leads us to that goal. We think that having kids is something that makes us happy, even though it might have economic disadvantages. We think that this happiness is an interest in a goal we have that is much higher than the economic interests that they have identified as the main burden. Madeleine?
Do you agree that in the long term it is more intelligent to don't eat candy?
No, I don't. I think that if I am unhappy and eating a piece of chocolate at this moment makes me happy, this is more important for me right now than maybe having to pay 20 euros 50 years from now because I need to go to the dentist. But if eating chocolate right now makes me a happier person than if I never ate chocolate at all, I will keep on eating chocolate because I want to be a happy person, not somebody who's miserable and then can think of maybe one day I'll have 20 years more because I didn't go to the dentist. No, thank you. Also about future security. He talked about everything that you can do with children, you can do without children. Well, Leo already told you why this is not true. And also I think you need to think of the future. Because now at the moment, when you're 20, you're 30 years old, sure you can do all that stuff. But think about when you're 50, 60, 80 years old. We think that especially for older people, having children, having grandchildren, provides them with an opportunity to experience the world on a whole different level, to experience the joy and the new experiences that their children and grandchildren are going through at the same time. We think it adds a whole new level of engagement that they have with the world around them. And we think that especially for old people, not only the financial security that they will be provided by the children and grandchildren, but also the emotional stability of knowing that there is somebody there for them that they have a connection with is extremely valuable for them. No, thank you. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about the good of society. Why is it good for society if we decide to have kids? Well, they already talked about overpopulation. First of all, this is not my personal problem to worry about overpopulation and in general. Also, we are two people. If we have one kid, it's still population still goes down, but also we can adopt a kid.
Point of
is-
information.
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you not accept that in order for a couple to adopt a child, there has to be a child born to meet that demand?
Yes, but I am not making that child be born. And this child is not being born because there is a demand for that child. I am pretty sure that very few people decide to get pregnant just because they think somebody might want to adopt a kid. In fact, there is a huge market for adoption, not only in Europe, but also in the US and other developed countries where people can want to adopt a child and there is no child for them to adopt. So I don't think this is demand thing is completely not factual. No, thank you. We think that adopting or fostering a child actually improves society because it means that those children that were, I think it is factual that people in the fostering system and orphans often have a difficult position in life because they don't have the sort of financial and social stability that other children have. So by taking those children in, by providing them with security, by helping to care for them and to educate them, we're actually helping to pass on our values that we obviously think are good values. We're actually helping them to improve society. We're passing on the things that we think we can give to improve society. And we can give out our legacy to children who need us. So we're helping other people, we're helping those children. Helping other people brings us joy. Having children brings us joy. So this is a win-win situation, basically. And also it improves society if those children can develop their full potential. And for those reasons, because we are fine with irrational decisions, if they make us happy, because we think it gives us joy, especially in our old age, and we think it's good for society, we beg you to oppose.
Thank you very much, Anna. And now we welcome the member of the government, Stefan.
Ready? Madam Speaker, the opposition talks about, it says that they want to have a child because it's more fun than a puppy. We say, well, if this is the case, well, they are very good. This is a very good reason why they shouldn't have a child for the sake of the unborn. Before I will go into 2 points, which is first the legacy problem that we have when we think as a legacy, or when we think that we need a child for our legacy. And secondly, about our own narratives and how our society changes from a society of reproduction to a knowledge society. Let me go into 3 points of rebuttal. First of all, they're talking about irrational decisions. Well, obviously not minding that the word irrational itself implies that they will regret these decisions later on. So we think like on that pure definitional sense, the proposition has already won because it's thinking more long term than they already have proven themselves. Secondly, the second point they come up with is, well, we want to have a child, right, because it's joy and because it gives us this unique joy only. Well, we think, first of all, we've already had reasons against why this joy might come at a cost, and they never really dealt with that. Secondly, we think, well, even if this child would bring the joy, we think it's a very small sacrifice to give up the joy. Firstly, because the value of a child, obviously in our society, isn't not that high as it used to be anymore. It's compared to a puppy and other things. We do simply have communities and our society cares for us even if we do not have a child. Therefore, like, we can sustain ourselves into old age through robots, through internet, whatever will be coming up, without having a child. This importance is not given anymore, and they haven't shown to us. Secondly, we think, well, the fun they are talking about, like camping and stuff, well, that also can be, you can get that through other means in our new society. It's not necessarily as in the old days where children were just the only people around to play with and have fun for. Thirdly, we think, well, in terms of the legacy you're contributing to society, a child actually takes you out of society, because a child means that you spend the years you're actually the fittest in caring for that child and not working and not passing on your knowledge and not doing all these good things you're talking of. So, but let me go on to a second more important. So we think it's a very small sacrifice if you give it up, and we will give you some more reasons why we think there's a responsibility to society, well, to not have the child and do other things instead. Secondly, on this entire society point, well, we think, like when they say, well, overpopulation or the other society, we just don't care, well, they're already conceding that a child is harmful for society, unless they're too much. But I think, well, by their own analysis, the child is a very selfish thing, right? Because you have it for your own joy, you have it to get out your own benefits and your own legacy. You're assuming your own supremacy of your own values to have a child and pass on the legacies and have it prevail over other people. We think this might have been important in the past. We think this is not the kind of society we want to live in, where we have this clash between, well, dynasties. Simply, we just do not have space for this kind of games anymore. And thirdly, on adoption. Well, we would still like to hear some analysis on like how adoption will decrease if there are less children out there. And secondly, we think, well, what you are doing is basically trying to avoid the clash in this debate, which is still people having a child and not adopting it. So good, but let me go on to on that point.
If I try really, really hard, I will have max 5 children. How are they going to change the overall world?
That's the point I want to talk about. Building a legacy out of a child is not what you can do in modern society, right? We know that this used to be the case where people were living on the farms and they needed a child to pass it on. We know that this wasn't the case in the very, very early days of us, where the main problem of our species was to reproduce in order to populate the world and carry on. We think this is not the case anymore. Our Western societies have changed. The way we want to leave our legacy, we seriously need to question ourselves as people whether a legacy should be that we set in another copy of ourselves, which we just teach the same, well, you have something else, in a planet where we already know that it won't be capable of caring for all of us. What we are creating with this is, first of all, a competition among those who survive. So we think it's a very, very selfish thing of a person in a Western liberal democracy to set a child into place, because it's these people who don't need it to sustain their farm, right? But on the other hand, it's exactly those children who will use up the most of the energy, who will do the most damage to the environment, as we've already done analysis. We think that this is a bad thing, because it implies that you, for your own legacy, sacrifice, and for the assumption of the supremacy of your own blood, sacrifice a lot of benefits you can otherwise give to society. We, for example, believe that the way you pass on your values in our society and the way our society should strive for is not a more populated planet, it's a planet where it's a more livable planet, it's a planet where people can live more ecologically together. But how does this work? This does not work if everybody just thinks of himself and populating the thing. We think the way this works is if you pass on your knowledge, if you focus on the things you're good at. We, for example, believe that a responsible parent, and if we're talking Western liberal democracy, we're talking about educated people who can use their time thinking up ideas how to make our planet better, who can teach those people who don't have it as good as them in those third world countries how to have a better life, and who can work on improving the life of the future without having a child. We think this is the kind of narrative you actually want to create when you have a negative. The narrative you want to create is that you had a good idea, that you set on, that you respected in the scientific community, that you respected in your own community, for being the good person that has worked. This does not work, however, if you had a child, or this does not work as good, however, if you had a child, because the child takes away of you the capacity in your best years to focus on that function in society. Instead, you are focusing on mere reproduction, something that is what we would say outdated. Secondly, we believe, and this is important in our Western liberal democracy, the entire model to just place your future upon the child that will sustain you is not sustainable within and of itself. We know that our society would just need to grow to eternity, something as that not be sustainable and such. But we think that you as a couple, what you should spend those 20 years on, that your child steals from you, is sustaining for your future, is caring for your future. And that is something you can better do, and you can better do if you have this time in order to work in that time, and not if you just set in a child, well, which is just making things worse in the end anyways. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And yeah, vote proposition.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And now we welcome the member of the opposition, Mark.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Speaker, before I come to my substantive material, I want to clarify one thing that apparently only Leo got so far. This is an extra motion. We're looking from the perspective of the couple. So all the arguments, such as widens the gap between rich and poor and government spending, even if they were true, they're all irrelevant. Because I already told you, and Stefan never really, he evaded, he never really answered the question. If I try really hard, I'll have 3 children, maybe 5, maybe even 10. In the large scale of 7 billion people, that's not going to make a difference. So we think 3 more people won't really change the climate. So basically we don't think that this point actually stands. So what we are going to look at specifically, why from our perspective, this is in fact, and that's what you wanted, a rational decision to get children. And while opening opposition elaborated on this kind trick or treat kind of mentality, we want to go a bit deeper in the analysis and explain how having children makes you a better person. And this leads to more gratification, how this widens your perspective and how this changes the dynamic of your social circle. But before I do that, one point of rebuttal. When Stefan talked about like he wanted to have a more educated society, I had to think of the movie Idiocracy. You know what happened there? All the stupid people just procreated, and clever people like Stefan thought, oh no, I can't have children, that's so bad. And how did the future look like? You just had more stupid people because you didn't have those like very sophisticated parents to educate them. We don't really think that this will lead to a better outcome, and never proven to us why. So we think that this point doesn't stand. So why is it a rational decision, and why is it better for me? Why does having children make me a better person? First of all, why this is relevant. We believe that humans in and of itself strive for self-improvement. Why do we do that? Because we think that our achievements are a source of pride and they are a source of self-respect. We think we're very disappointed if we do not reach the goals that we have set ourselves, if we are not successful at what we wanted to, and if we know that we haven't fulfilled our potentials. And we think that specifically having children massively helps your ability to make yourself a better person. We think that why do they do that? They constantly challenge and widen your perspective because you now get to take care of another human being. We think that's a huge responsibility that you've never had before, and it teaches you all the skills necessary to do that. For example, you will learn patience, you will learn persistence, you will learn all the things that otherwise you'd have a very hard time to learn. You will more enjoy the simple things. We have already heard a little about that. For example, enjoying things like sunsets because you see that your little daughter is just like really amazed by what she's seeing there. But we also think that you have strong motivators here. Why? Because you want to be a role model for your children. And we think we see that in all the statistics. People who are parents usually have much lower crime rates. They usually are much more in control of their life. Sit down, sit down. Why? Because they want to be a role model and they want to show their children how it's done. We think it can be a motivator for self-improvements. We see a lot of mothers, they actually can't quit smoking until the day when they find out that they are pregnant. Because now they know that they will harm another human being. Now they actually get this motivator to help themselves and make a better person because they also know that they have to care for this child. And we think that this is a very massive motivator. It also helps to improve your work-life balance. So we think that this is also beneficial. And we think in the end, if you look back upon your life and you can say that you're proud of yourself and the kind of person you have become, then it is much more valuable than all the missing money on your bank account that you can't use anymore because you're dead now, because you haven't had children. So we think that point just doesn't stand. Yeah.
We already explained to you that there are both direct and indirect harms to you as a couple caused by overpopulation. Please engage with our points instead of just...
As I already said, like this is an extra motion, it's irrelevant, and I explained that to you. I'm sorry. Okay, change of perspective. We think that they talk about the long-term goals, but actually we think, like even this plays into what you asked, we think that specifically having children facilitates them because we think when we care most about the future, we care most about the future if we have people who we care about live there. We think we strive to suicidal progress. We are interested in things, for example, like climate change, like women's rights, all those things, and they make us happy to try to improve the situation because we no longer care about the instant gratification for ourselves, because we care about a better future for our children, and that in the end also makes ourselves happier because we don't just spend all time I don't know, eating food and stuff, but actually doing something that has a deeper meaning. And we think that these are far more complex pleasures and something that you can actually be proud of at the end of your life. And we think that this sit down is basically a good thing for you as a person. No, thank you. Okay, on to the last point that I want to talk about, how specifically the mechanism of how your society, your societal circle will change and how you need dependent on future support. We think that specifically as a young person, it's very hard to anticipate what your future is going to look like and where you're going to live. We think that usually you live in the present. You don't really care about all the facts of reality. But we think it just turns out that in almost all cases the reality changes, and then you're often much better prepared if you actually have children. Why? Because when you're young you usually have your friends group, you have your parents, you have a partner, and we think that's all fine and you don't really worry about the future, and you have the money and all spend that on instant gratification. However, we think usually when you get older, what happens? Like many of your friends will marry, whether you do it or not, it doesn't bother them. They will usually marry, that's just statistics, so they will have much less time to spend with you. You will, even if you're retired, then you will have even more time, but you won't have any family to spend it with. Your parents usually die because you're older than you, at least at some point they unfortunately do. Relationships sometimes end, and we think then you often end up very old and lonely, and then it's too late to adopt children once you're 60. We think if you have children, the situation develops entirely different, because we think that children will hardly ever abandon you, unless you beat them, but we assume that we're a reasonable couple who doesn't do that. So we think that we see that especially in poor countries where people have big families because they know that children care about them. And there are all those kind of services that sometimes you can't even get, like for example when you're on your deathbed, to have someone who holds their hand, and maybe having your own children there is very good for you, and that's something that maybe if you have the money you can pay someone to do that, but I don't really think it's the real thing, and it's not basically as beneficial. Also, all those kinds of services like grocery shopping that usually grandchildren do for do for their grandparents. We think that that's also some benefit that you don't want to think about when you're a young person, but usually it helps to have a lot of people who are younger and who can help you with it. So we think all those kinds of services you might be able to buy, but when you have children, you will get them for free, and you will get them out of love, because you have children that care about you as a person, and we think that generally this is much more rewarding. This is also like a financial benefit we have to consider, and for all those reasons children make you happy, and we are very proud to post. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. And now we welcome the summation speaker of the government, Madeline.
All children and all people in today's society have a benefit if everyone today makes a smart and intelligent decision. This decision includes that we say, as knowledgeable people, that we don't want to have children, either raise them ourselves or adopt them. We say, and explicitly in closing, we say, don't be selfish, don't harm others just because you want to satisfy the need to post Facebook pictures of your baby. Basically, Mark says in closing, 5 children can't impact the world. You, as an intelligent being, what we say, we have to be that better person already before we have children. We have to be that good person right now, right here, and in this moment, because we want to have a big contribution in intelligence, in labor to today's society, because we think in the end this will be a better strategy for everyone to have as a long life on this earth, and also a good life, as good as possible for everyone. So how we see this debate? Well, first off, we have a rational cost-benefit decision, which comes from a very personal perspective, versus an irrational joy and preserving legacy. Well, what came out of those first clashes is that basically joy is still possible. You can still have a ball game without children. You can also have satisfaction through your own job, through your own hobby. For example, some people might find satisfaction in winning a debating competition. That can be quite pleasurable. I don't need to have 5 children to get joy out of that moment. And I think I will get joy out of that also when I'm 80 and don't have children. So then the second clash we see as the whole point of family satisfaction. And then Mark, and also in an opening already, they talk about emotional stability. I don't know, but who of you is really emotional unstable? I mean, don't you have friends? Don't you have like other people to go to, a therapist or someone? I mean, really, we don't need our family. And Mark, for the sunsets, your family is living in the United States right now. Explain me please, when your mom calls you tonight, I really want to watch the sunset with you tomorrow. Do you really get in a plane and watch the sunset with your mom? Come on, who of you guys is not from Vienna? In today's society, people move all over the place, and we can't be there for our family because that's how society is today. We are a very globalized world, and we think it's a good thing because we want a detachment of genes, we want a detachment of legacies, we want a detachment of all that what brings actually very negative thought, and I will continue that in my point. So then. That's why we don't see the whole point. But what we see is preventing a selfish behavior, surviving of the intelligent thought, and which actually contributes towards, but brings a big contribution to society. So, and Stefan explicitly said how we're gonna do this. So the status quo right now is that our resources on this earth, we are very limited. Not just in environmental issues, not just in financial issues, also in intelligence issues. So until now, people like produce babies because out of the urge that our genes have to survive, you know. The Lannisters have to make babies because otherwise they won't be able to have enough, you know, war people to fight the Northerners. Let's just be clear that exactly that we don't want. We don't want people to have that identity, to feel the need to fight against people. We want those people to be already good without having children. We want people to understand right now that they have to take back their own selfish behavior and contribute in terms of their smart choices, their smart ideas, like Albert Einstein, like Nobel Prize winners, which are not, you know, distracted from raising children and changing diapers, towards the society in terms of intelligence, in terms of labor, and also. When they say work-life balance, I mean seriously, every woman I know who works and has a child is under extreme stress. I mean, let's really, you know, lift the veil of the fairy tale supermom. I mean, it is hard. It is hard, and it is distracting, and it is occupying you from contribution to the society. Why do we have to do this? Because we know. People in Nigeria, which are really poor and don't have education, they don't know. That's why the responsibility lies on us to do that, to be better, to not sell. I take opening.
Thank you. So, Maddie, so here's the point. So if our contribution in adopting someone is providing them with all the opportunities of our educated Western society, how do you show that those kinds of contributions are not the ones that are going to give that child the opportunity to discover clean, sustainable, clean energy over the long run and save your apocalyptic bad society in the end?
The thing is, we already have children, and we have, you know, people who don't know that, and our people who are very smart. But the thing is, what stays in the status quo is the education, is the access to that education. And we believe that, and you can also see that in statistics, that even people out of those low income and unsmart families are actually through education, through those liberal and globalization and world, are actually being more intelligent. We have benefit an overall rise of intelligence and IQ from all people to a higher IQ, because this already exists, and that's what we find good. We want people to be detached from their family genes. We want people to detach from all negative racism and thoughts and also national thoughts. We want people to concentrate what they can give to this world best, and we think that a human being that has a good education, a financial background, which is quite supportive, they can contribute the best and the most without having children, and concentrating on what they're doing best is providing labor and intelligence to this society, so that all children who are living in this world right now can live with good resources and in touch with the world and in touch with the intelligence in the most and best possible way. For all these reasons, I welcome you on our side proposition.
Thank you very much, Madeleine. And now we welcome the last speaker of this debate and the summation speaker of the opposition, Jakob.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Mr. Speaker, that was an interesting debate. No, it was not. I will clearly show you why this opposition knocked the ball out of the ballpark, and the proposition here failed desperately to engage with the material. So, first of all, Ellie, on your demand, here I'm dealing with your substantive. You're irrelevant, and I will tell you why, and Mark elaborated on that already. Because what this entire proposition bench failed to do here is basically show how a single couple out of an actor motion, I am a couple now, kind of a split personality, but anyway, me as a couple have to care about the entire future of a society, of a country, of a globe, you name it. Why is there something like that as a responsibility? And Mark has clearly shown you that basically what we see is that, first of all, I'm thinking about myself, my future endeavors, all the benefits I get out of it, and on the next step, I may think about societal impact, I may think about what happens in the future, but this is not my main concern. We live, as Stefan said, in a Western liberal society, where basically the entire community has not a strong feeling, as it might slightly be in a Japanese or whatever environment. Still, we believe, even in those societies, it is essential that the individual, first of all, takes care of its own benefits, and that's what we saw in the second half of the debate, that those personal benefits overweight what we have seen, and maybe, to a certain extent, we see in the first half of the debate that we have then a certain added aspect, like the societal aspect, we take into account. So, here are the 3 points I saw in this debate and how I'd like to summarize the debate. First of all, I'd like to summarize the debate on how to look at your life. So basically, you're sitting at your deathbed and you're looking back at your life. What is it that you're counting for? Is it what the proposition tells you, that your balance board has a plus on the active or passive or I don't know side? Or are you remembering all the joy, all the memories that actually make a life worth living? We see, for example, and Mark already elaborated on that we have people that are rich but lonely. And that's exactly what this proposition is proposing. They're proposing rich but lonely people that wasted their life. We from the opposition, and that's the only thing Leo brought into the debate, was basically that they're telling us that joy is something that we cannot measure. Joy is something that we could not fit into a balance board and activate it somewhere and then say, well, joy is something that's like 300 euros of joy you earned today. So this is seriously not possible. We say that even a little bit of joy is something that people should strive on, and that's exactly what then came out of the debate. No, thanks, later on. So the second point was the point about society, and I think I already elaborated on that. That yes, we may have on the second thought something we take into our decision as a societal aspect, but this is not our main concern. It is first of all that we say, what are the responses from us? And that's exactly where Mark comes in with his extension. And he really showed us, first of all, we take care of what's the benefit for the couple itself as the actor of this fucking motion. So basically what we see is that the benefit, and that leads me to the third point here, is what are the benefits? And Mark has clearly shown us that the person in and of itself makes a transformation. Even though Madeleine tried to tackle that point and saying, well, you have to be a right person to get children. And we say, no, absolutely not. You will become the right person by your children. That's exactly the thing that children do. They make you a better person. That's the sake of why we have them. Because they reflect us, they question us, they teach us, like patience, like how to learn them, how to get rid of them, how to take them for a walk. That's all things we cannot experience, for example, with a puppy. That's why Leo Salt said that the children is more important than the puppy, because the child is able to reflect yourself in a more drastical way, and that's exact, more drastical way. We'll only see that on children because we educate them on further things like that. So we see that it is very essential how the child interacts with the couple, and we see that, for example, on the potential and on the abilities, we see that there's a huge thing that the vision can develop. You will think, and that's exactly what they brought up and they messed up so deeply, the environmental aspect. We see, when do you care about the freaking environment? I will have enough oil to drive my car to work every day, but my children, and here's the keyword, may not. So I'm asking you, who will more think about the environment? Me as a parent who wants also oil or something renewable energy for my children, or I'm still driving with my oil machine every day to work. Of course the person with the children. Of course this person will have a longer outlook to life, and I take Madeleine on that because she's bought the table.
Don't you agree that people who make unsmart decisions and actually they don't care about the environment until they...
Okay, the environment again is something that we... Thank you.
Survive as a whole human being on this earth.
Thank you for taking my time. So basically what we see is that, yes, we believe people make rational decisions. We believe from the opposition side that having children is something that is either rational or irrational, we can decide on, but we think it is rational on the closing side. Because what we clearly see is that it has more benefits to the individual. And even though it may be irrelevant or not, we see that it influences the person in its behavior in such a way that it makes him a better person. So why is that important? Why should I care about getting a better person? Because it's the missing link now. Okay, I will get a better person because it will influence my life back. It will give me the strength to make more sustainable decisions after all. Take more factors in consideration than just relying on my own life. So we believe this will overall lead to better decisions that will reflect, that will reflect back on my life. So having children gives you a broader view in the way that you look at the world, makes you a better person, makes you more sustainable to the future, and therefore a more productive thing of the society. And here we come back to the society, yes? So this is something that we really want to foster. So, in my speech, and especially on the web speech, I have clearly shown to you that basically why we want children. Because they make us as the parents, they make us as humans better. And that's the first consideration we have to take. That this reflects directly on us and makes us a more productive society and fosters to better solution that we can build on and build our life and the couple's life on that. Second, yes, we may see that on a second step, we have implications on society and stuff like that. Well, we from the closing believe that this is not the main factor we decide whether to get children or not. Because there are many things that came out of it. And because that's something I really want to mention, because the first half came up with this economical stuff like that. You believe that basically what we see is that the economy is something that influences children, and we believe this is a societal aspect, and we change society for that, and we're good with your entire point. So, for all those reasons, apply to your inner child, get to the opposition. Thank you.